It happened on a Monday morning, right after first bell. The hallway smelled like pencil shavings and cheap perfume, lockers slammed, sneakers squeaked, and gossip echoed in whispers that traveled faster than the speed of light. Everyone thought they knew how the day would go. But they didn't. No one expected the school's star football player, 6'2", broad shoulders, captain of the team, to be clutching his knee on the cold, hard floor. No one expected the quiet girl, the one he had cornered, to be standing over him, shaking yet unbroken. What led to that moment wasn't just about football or bullies, or even revenge. It was about dignity, respect, and the strength no one believed she had. And once you know her story, you'll never look at her the same way again. Her name was Emily Carter. She was the kind of girl people didn't notice until they wanted to make fun of someone. She wore her brown hair tied back in a messy ponytail, glasses slipping down her nose, and jeans that weren't from the mall's new arrivals section, but from thrift shops her mom visited after long shifts at the diner. Emily was quiet, but not weak. She carried books like they were shields, her notebooks filled with sketches of flowers and half-finished poems she'd never read aloud. But in a school obsessed with popularity and status, she was invisible, until she crossed paths with Jason Miller. Jason was the opposite of Emily in every way. Popular, wealthy, loved by teachers, adored by fans. Friday night games weren't about football. They were about watching Jason score touchdowns and then celebrate with that charming, arrogant smile. His name was whispered in the hallways, scribbled on lockers with hearts, shouted in the bleachers. But behind that golden boy image, there was a darker side. Jason had a habit of picking on those weaker than him, especially if it made his friends laugh. And Emily, with her quiet manner, became his favorite target. It started small, mocking the way she dressed, knocking books out of her hands, calling her charity case. But soon it grew bolder. Notes taped to her locker with cruel jokes, snide comments when she answered in class. Laughter that followed her down the hallways like shadows. Emily told herself to ignore it, to stay strong, but silence is heavy, and night after night she cried quietly into her pillow so her mom wouldn't hear. One day, after Jason tripped her in the cafeteria and the entire room burst into laughter, Emily finally snapped. Not in anger, not with violence, but with resolve. She decided she wouldn't let him break her spirit. That evening, instead of drowning in tears, she opened her laptop and searched for self-defense classes. The local gym offered one Krav Maga on Tuesday and Thursday nights. She signed up with her saved babysitting money, walking there alone, unsure but determined. The first classes were brutal. She came home with bruises on her arms, sore muscles, and aching feet. But for the first time in months, she felt a strange flicker of power. She learned how to defend herself, how to use leverage against someone bigger, stronger. She learned that sometimes strength isn't about size. It's about confidence, about refusing to let fear dictate your steps. Slowly, Emily began to change. She held her head higher. She walked with more certainty. She no longer lowered her gaze when Jason smirked at her in the hall. Jason noticed, and it infuriated him. He didn't like his toys fighting back. His pride demanded he put her in her place. His friends egged him on, joking that Emily had gotten too bold. That's when the moment came, the one no one could forget. It was a Monday morning. Emily was at her locker, sliding her math book onto the shelf. Jason leaned against the metal door, blocking her. His friends snickered behind him. "Hey, charity case," he sneered. "Think you're tough now? Think you can just walk around like you belong here?" His hand pressed the locker shut. Emily froze, her pulse racing. She had dreamed of this confrontation, dreaded it, but now it was real. He leaned closer, his voice low. "Maybe you need a reminder of who runs this place." Emily's heart thundered, but her training whispered back, "Breathe. Don't panic. You know what to do." She looked him straight in the eye for the first time, and her voice didn't shake when she said, "Move." Jason laughed, pushing harder against the locker. But in that second, when his arrogance left him careless, Emily acted. One swift motion, just as she'd practiced. Her knee drove up hard, hitting its target. Jason gasped, his eyes widening in shock, then pain. He crumpled to the floor, clutching his knee, the echo of his fall silencing the hallway. His friends froze. Emily's hands trembled, but she didn't back away. She simply stood there, breathing, alive with the fire of dignity restored. The hallway buzzed with whispers. Students leaned out of classroom doors, shocked. No one had ever stood up to Jason Miller, the untouchable star of the football team. And now, he was on the ground, His dream, the very knee he needed for football, potentially ruined. But for Emily, this wasn't about revenge. It was about survival. She grabbed her book, lifted her chin, and walked away. The balance of power had shifted, and nothing in that school would ever be the same again. Rumors spread faster than wildfire. By lunch, the whole school knew what happened. By evening, parents whispered about it at dinner tables. By morning, teachers discussed it in hushed tones in the staff lounge. Some said Emily had gone too far, others said Jason had finally gotten what he deserved. But one truth stood firm: Emily was no longer invisible. Jason, meanwhile, faced the unthinkable. His knee injury was serious. Doctors warned that his football future was uncertain. For someone who had wrapped his entire identity around the sport, it felt like the world had ended. He raged, cursed, and blamed Emily, but deep down, when the noise of his anger faded, he was left with silence. And in that silence, guilt. He remembered every cruel word, every shove, every time he had made her cry for the sake of a laugh. And now, lying in bed with his leg bandaged, he realized the cost of arrogance. Emily, too, wrestled with emotions. She hadn't wanted to ruin anyone's future, but she couldn't regret standing up for herself. At night, she replayed the moment in her head, not with pride but with a strange heaviness. Power didn't feel as sweet as she imagined. It felt like responsibility. She knew she had drawn a line, one that couldn't be erased.